بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لم يزل عليما قديرا. الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا، وفضل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم على سائر خلقه، وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد، وأسأل الله أن يجعل هذا اللقاء لقاء الرحمة وبركة. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope everyone is doing good, inshallah. So today we will be taking the topic on the book Akhlaq Hamalathul Qur'an. The book of Akhlaq Hamalathul Qur'an that was written by Imam Bakr Al-Ajurri rahimahullah was a book that was written in the 300 Hijri, in the first three centuries, which was considered as the best of best centuries by Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And this book that was written is what was considered as one of the best books that was written in the part of Akhlaq Hamalathul Qur'an, on the etiquettes of a preserver of a Hafidh al-Qur'an, or the preserver of the Qur'an. And this book was later on followed up by many of the Imams. Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah, he had completed some of the topics from this book in his books, as well as if you see the book of Badruddin al-Zarkashi rahimahullah, in his book Al-Burhan fi Ulum al-Quran, he brings up a bab called Akhlaq Hamlat al-Quran. Likewise, Imam al-Suyuti rahimahullah, even in his book Al-Itqan fi Ulum al-Quran, he follows up and he refers to the book of Akhlaq Hamalathul Qur'an by Imam Bakr Al-Ajurri rahimahullah. So this book is one of the most important book that a Hafidh al-Qur'an or a Talib al-Ilm should be studying at the very beginning stages of his journey, of his or her journey. And if you come to the topic of adab, if you and that's what the Salaf of this ummah, the Salaf al-Salihin of this ummah, what they had mentioned was the ta'allum al-adab qabla talab al-ilm, that learning al-adab is more important and it comes before talab al-ilm, it comes before seeking knowledge in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is what Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, that I was sent to complete the manners, to complete the akhlaq and the husnul akhlaq that was sent upon the Muslims. And even if you would take Islam as a subject, even if you take the whole complete deen in place, you would find that the hukum or the ahkam that you see as what is halal and haram comes back only to 20% of the whole deen, and the rest of the 80% comes back to makarim al-akhlaq, and it's what's linked with the moral values and the things that we have to hold on to as strong values in our deen. And this book that was written by Al-Imam Abu Bakr Al-Ajurri rahimahullah is around 140 pages. And this session would be more of a summary into the explanation of this book bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And we will try to cover as much as topics as we can bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. To begin with, Imam Abi Bakr Al-Ajurri rahimahullah, the word Al-Ajurri, it is linked back to one of the cities or the villages that is there in Al-Baghdad. And during his time, the Khilafah of Islam, or the most of the scholars, were in Baghdad, which was the capital of the Islamic Caliphate. And during his time, Imam Al-Ajur rahimahullah, the village of Al-Ajurri, it got famous, or the name Al-Ajurri, it actually means the red bricks that is famous within the buildings that you would find within the Arab or the Arabian Peninsula. And that is what is called Al-Ajurri. Even today, if you would see that within Hijaz or within the people of Arab, they refer to Al-Ajurri as the red brick that is famous in some of the buildings, and that kind of keeps the place cool. The village of Al-Ajurri was famous for building these, or for the production of these bricks, and that is why it was given the name Al-Ajurri. And Imam Al-Ajurri rahimahullah, he was born in Al-Ajurri, and later on in his life he moved to Mecca. He moved to Mecca and he stayed in Mecca. Initially, when he went to Mecca, he made dua, Ya Allah, keep me in Mecca at least for an year. And that is when he made the dua, he heard as if someone was saying, why is it just an year? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept him in Mecca for 30 years. And he is considered as one of the tabi'in, because he lived very close to the time of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And he lived in Mecca for 30 years. And after 30 years, it's as if he heard sound calling upon him that your time is over, and he passed away in Mecca itself in the year 360 Hijri. And the book that you would find about Akhlaq Hamalathul Qur'an as a PDF that is written by Imam Al-Ajurri, and today the famous tahqiq that you would find would be of Dr. Ghanim Qadduri. And this tahqiq, this version of the book that you would find was compiled, and the original nusakh was compiled by one of the students of Imam Al-Ajurri, where he links back his sanad all the way to Imam Al-Ajurri rahimahullah. So this book consists of 9 chapters, 9 babs. The first bab Fadli Hamalatul Qur'an, the virtues of preserving or becoming a Hafidh al-Quran. The second as Fadli Man Ta'allama al-Quran wa 'allama, the virtues of the one who learns the Quran and teaches it. The third one, فضل الاجتماع في المساجد لدرس القرآن, the virtues of gathering together in a masjid to learn the Quran or teach the Quran. Then in the fourth bab is where he comes to the main portion of the book itself, ذكر أخلاق أهل القرآن. He comes to the portion of akhlaq of Hamalatul Qur'an, or the people of Quran, the etiquettes of the people of Quran that they have to adhere to. And he mentions these 3 babs: فضل حملة القرآن, فضل من تعلم القرآن وعلمه, فضل الاجتماع في المساجد لدرس القرآن, before mentioning about Akhlaq Hamalat al-Quran, so that it is the motivation for each and every one of us to have a good motivation into getting ourselves into the doors of Quran, into the journey of Quran, before we learn about the akhlaq of the people of Quran. And then he talks about akhlaq man qara al-Quran la yuridu bihi Allah. So here you will see that in terms of akhlaq Ahlul Quran, he will speak about the akhlaq of Ahlul Quran that you should adhere to, and the good etiquettes and the bad etiquettes that we need to stay away from. And I sincerely ask that everyone who benefit from this halaqah, that we see this as a mirror. We see this book as a mirror in front of us. Are we having all this akhlaq, or are we holding on to this akhlaq, or are we not? And we use it as a mirror in front of us, and we see it as a self-evaluation on ourselves, as do we hold on to all these etiquettes that we need to hold on as the people of Quran. That is, then the 5th chapter he mentions Akhlaq man qara al-Quran la yurid bihi Allah, the etiquettes of the one who recites the Quran and he does not read the Quran for the sake of Allah, but he has other priorities in mind, or the niyyah is not the correct sincerity. Then the next bab he talks about أخلاق المقري إذا جلس يقرئ ويلقن لله ما ويلقن ماذا ينبغي له. So the next part is where he talks about the akhlaq of the muqri, the one who sits to teach Quran. If he sits to teach the Quran and he starts reading or teaching the Quran to the students, what are the things that he needs to follow as a teacher? The next bab, he talks about ذكر أو ذكر أخلاق من يقرأ على المقرئ. So here he talks about the akhlaq, the manners that a student needs to have when he recites the Quran to a muqri, to a teacher. Then the next bab, he talks about آداب القراء عند تلاوتهم القرآن مما لا ينبغي لهم جهله. So the adab or the etiquettes that a qari of Quran needs to have when he is reciting the Quran, that he has to adhere to or he has to keep in mind, and that he does not forget about when he recites the Quran. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from the ones who sincerely adhere to the akhlaq of Quran, and make us from the people of Quran. Ameen ya Rabb. Then the last bab, fi husni sawti bil Quran. He talks about having reciting the Quran in husni sawt, in a good voice. And from these babs, we will try to take as much as we can or things that benefit us. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He benefits this halaqah, He benefits us with knowledge that is beneficial, and He keeps us away from knowledge that is not beneficial, and He makes us from the ones who practice what we learn. So when we go to the bab of Fadli Hamalathul Qur'an, the virtues of the one who is a Hamil al-Qur'an. Some of the hadith that he mentions, before we go on to the hadith, I want to mention that if you take this book as on overall, like incomplete, you would see that there are around 90 hadith that he has mentioned either as marfu', that means linking to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, or as mawquf, or as maqtu' to the Sahabi or the Tabi'in. So from this, around 45 of the hadith that he has mentioned are marfu' to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and the rest are mawquf or maqtu' to the Sahaba or the tabi'in, or the tabi'in. So what we mean by marfu' is that when a hadith is linked to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, we call it marfu'. Or when it's linked to a Sahabi, we call it mawquf. And when it's linked to a tabi'i, we call it as maqtu'. So in this part, Bab Fadli Hamalatul Qur'an, these are hadith mostly that we know of, but we will be touching on it a bit as an introduction before we go into the akhlaq of Hamalatul Qur'an. So for the first hadith, that is one of the few hadith that it's mentioned in the book, عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لله من الناس أهلون قيل من هم يا رسول الله قال أهل القرآن هم أهل الله وخاصته. Subhanallah, this hadith most of us know, which is the hadith that Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu, the hadith that Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu, he narrates from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam that there are specific people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relates them to himself, whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls as Ahlullah, the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Sahabas, they asked Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, man hum ya Rasulullah? Who are these people? And that is when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, Ahlul Qur'an hum ahlullahi wa khassatuh. The people of Quran are the ones who are the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanallah, this hadith is of such a high level of honor that a Hafidh al-Quran gets, or the people of Quran get, because when you see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the places where He has mentioned about Himself, for example, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ. Allah mentions where He talks about His oneness, and where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator, He is the raziq, He is the maintainer, He is the one who protects us, He is the one who created us, and He has done each and every single thing for us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is deserving of to have all the proudness and Al-Jabbar, that He is Al-Jabbar, He is Al-Raziq, He is Al-Ghaffar. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says, لم يكن له كفوا أحد, there is no one that can even be in partner with Him. And لم يلد ولم يولد, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was not born, neither will He give birth. And with the way the Yahud and the Nasara were cursed, or were earned the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by linking a son to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yadan billah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is free of all the sifat of human beings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who is free from anything that a human being needs of. We have needs as human beings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who does not have needs. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions or relates to Himself as Ahlu lillahi min nasi ahlun, and when He says yani, that He has an ahl, and when He uses this word of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when He mentions this word, it is not something simple. And He has never mentioned this word for any other hadith except for Quran. So imagine the amount of honor, the honor that someone gets when he's called as Ahlullah. And Allah, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, He mentioned, Hum Ahlullahi wa khassatu. And these are the people of Allah, and these are the special people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. This is an honor that many of us, we look at this hadith and it just passes on over us before we even ponder over this. But we have to make sure that we ponder over this hadith, because these are very important. The second hadith of Abdullah ibn Amr radiyallahu an النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, he mentions, قال يقال لصاحب القرآن اقرأ وارتق ورتل كما كنت ترتل في الدنيا فإن منزلتك عند آخر آية تقرأها. The second hadith that we're talking about, and Abdullah ibn Amr عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال, that Abdullah ibn Amr is narrating from Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, يقال لصاحب القرآن, on the day of Qiyamah, it will be told to the Sahib al-Quran, اقرأ وارتقي ورتل, read the Quran. It will be told on the day of Qiyamah to the Sahib al-Quran, to the one who preserves the Quran and memorizes the Quran, اقرأ, read from the Quran, وارتقي, and raise in status, ورتل كما كنت ترتل في الدنيا. And here we need to ask a question. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when He mentions iqra, and when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on that day of Qiyamah, when He mentions iqra, when He says us to read, is it as a test, to be tested as what we have memorized, or is it for something else? Some of us, we think that it is as a test that on the day of Qiyamah Allah will say as iqra, as part of that we get tested on how much we remember from dunya. But that is not the case in this hadith. When you see the shuruh, the explanations of this hadith from the ulamas, you find that on that day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already knows what we have memorized and what we have forgotten. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from the Hafidh al-Quran that preserves each and every ayah of Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says on day of Qiyamah, Iqra, or when it's said to these people, or when said to the people of Quran, Iqra, it is as a part of honoring rather than a test, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already knows how much each one has memorized from the Quran in dunya, and what they have not memorized and what they have forgotten. So on day of Qiyamah, after the day of Qiyamah, it will not be as a place where you have a competition or something, like a place where you have all the people and they're all watching, or how much is this person able to pass or not able to pass, etc., etc. But it is more of an honoring, a takreem that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does for the Sahib al-Quran on the day of Qiyamah, where it will be said to him to read, and he will be honored, and the people will see him being honored, and it is for to show the people that he is being honored, Sahib al-Quran, and he will be elevated in status. And وَرَتِّلْ كَمَا كُنْتَ تُرَتِّلُ فِي الدُّنْيَا, and read the Quran the same way that you were reciting in dunya. فَإِنَّ مَنْزِلَتَكَ, and indeed your status is in the last ayah that you recite. Subhanallah. And another hadith from Aisha radiallahu anha, she narrates, that she narrates is that the levels or the status of Jannah, or the number of levels that we have in Jannah, is the same levels as the number of ayahs in the Quran. So we know in the Quran there's around 6,236 ayahs according to Ahl Kufa, and according to the Qur'at it would differ, but that is the status that you have in Jannah. The status of a person, or the levels in Jannah, is according to the number of ayahs that is there in Quran, where and this is one of the hadith that the scholars used to take it as a dalil. فَإِنَّ مَنْزِلَتَكَ عِنْدَ آخِرِ آيَةٍ تَقْرَأُهَا, and indeed your status is in the last ayah that you recite, which is the last ayah of Quran. So the question here is there, when someone completes the whole Quran, is there a level after that? No. When someone completes the whole Quran, that is where you call it as Jannatul Firdaus. When someone completes the whole Quran in memorization and follows that, and here when you say Hamil al-Quran, it is different from it's different from the one who just memorizes the Quran. When we say Hamil al-Quran, the one who preserves Quran, and even when you say a Hafidh al-Quran, it does not just mean yani Hafidhun li hurufi, that he preserves it only in his letters, that we recite Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. We know it by letters, but indeed we need to put it in practice. That is what is mentioned by Hamil al-Quran. So the one who recites, the one who preserved the entire of Quran, and he memorized the entire of Quran in this earth and lived by it, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those ones. In Jannah, when they go to the last of the highest of highest status, that will be Jannatul Firdaus. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us from Jannatul Firdaus. And this book was a very or studying this book was a very hard journey on how many mistakes that we make, or how many things that we are having weaknesses in, or we are missing in terms of being a Hamilul Quran. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive our sins, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from the ones who are sincere. The third hadith that is mentioned, عن عبد الله بن مسعود رضي الله عنه قال: تعلموا القرآن واتلوه فإنكم تؤجرون به إن بكل اسم منه عشرا. We all know this hadith, the hadith that was mentioned, that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, where he said that for each and every harf that is recited, we get 10 hasanat. We get 10 rewards for each and every harf that is recited. And he said alif lam mim together is not one harf, but alif is one harf, which you get 10 hasanat, 10 hasanat. Lam is one harf, which you get 10 hasanat, and mim is one harf, which you get 10 hasanat. We can move on to the next bab, the next chapter, that is in فضل من تعلم القرآن وعلمه. So some of the hadith that has been mentioned, Imam Al-Ajurri rahimahullah, that he has mentioned in his book about فضل من تعلم القرآن وعلمه, the virtues of the one who learns the Quran and teaches it. عن عثمان بن عفان رضي الله عنه قال: شعبة قلت له عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: نعم. قال: خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, this hadith that he had mentioned, خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه, we all know it. I don't think there's any طالب العلم that does not know this hadith. that the best of you is the one who learns the Quran and teaches the Quran. And when you say learns the Quran and teaches the Quran, it is not by its huruf. And this is an important word that we need to touch on. And Imam Al-Ajurri rahimahullah, in his muqaddimah, in his introduction to this book, he mentions this word very specifically. And don't forget the timeline that this book was written. This book was written 300 years after Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, and we are 1,400 years after Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away. So it was written 1,000 years before us. And subhanallah, he mentions in the muqaddimah to be sincere about not memorize the Quran only by its huruf, only by its letters. And this is something that is prominent today that many of us unfortunately fall into, that we memorize the Quran by its letters and we forget to apply the Quran that we have learned. And he says to use this book as a mirror, right? We have to use this book as a mirror upon us to see ourselves on, and we self-evaluate us. Do we have these virtues? I mean, do we have this akhlaq? Are we holding on to these manners or no? And when he mentioned خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, it was a very serious or a very sincere hadith that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentioned, and many of the Sahabas took this hadith as a qaida, as a fundamental in their life. Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami, rahimahullah, he was one of the tabi'i who recited to Uthman bin Affan radiallahu an, and many other Sahabas. He mentioned, فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي أَقْعَدَنِي مَقْعَدِ هَذَا. He mentions this hadith, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَ, is the hadith that made me sit in Kufa for 40 years. You know, during the time of Uthman radiallahu an, in the Caliphate of Uthman radiallahu an, you all know, some of the students who were with me before, you learned about the Jam'a of Quran, the compilations of Quran that happened in the three marhalas. And many of you all know the three stages where the Quran was compiled during the time of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, during the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu an, and during the time of Uthman radiallahu. And during the time of Uthman radiallahu anh, there was more and more futuhat. The Islam started spreading very widely, and many of the countries or many of the Muslims from different area, they accepted Islam. And you all know the story of Hudhayfa bin al-Yaman, where he comes back to Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh, and he mentions the story of where Ahlul Iraq and Ahlul Kufa, they were fighting upon that qira'ati, my qira'ah is better than your qira'ah in terms of qira'atul ashr that we had touched upon. So Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh, he copies the mushaf into, in some of the riwayas it's mentioned as 7 copies, some of them 6, some of them more, but he copies the mushaf and he sends it to different places with a teacher or an ambassador for that place. And one of the ambassadors that was sent was Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami to Kufa. And subhanallah, this hadith, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ, he took it so seriously, and he was in Kufa teaching for 40 years. And subhanallah, today, if you would see this, the intention that he had, the ikhlas that he had, see the tawfiq Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him. Today, if you take any single sanad, any single narrations or chain of narrations that go back to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam in Quran, in riwayat Hafs, or in Shu'bah, in riwayat of Asim, or some other riwayas, you will see that it will go through Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami. It will go through Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami. So imagine the number of reward that Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami rahimahullah is getting from just following this hadith, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. Subhanallah. We all know that Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami is the teacher of Imam Al-Asim. The riwayah that is prominent today, that is recited in the Arabian Peninsula, which is, and other places, which is riwayat Hafs that we recite. And riwayat Hafs, the Imam Hafs narrated from Imam Asim, and Imam Asim narrated from Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami, who narrated from Uthman bin Affan and other Sahabas from Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Subhanallah. The other hadith, so there are so many hadith that is mentioned in each of the babs. I had not took everything. I summarized only some of them. And there is another book that I will be, which is a summary of Akhlaq Hamalathul Qur'an, that I will be relying on from the bab of ذكر أهل القرآن, ذكر أخلاق of أهل القرآن, inshallah, because there are some hadith which it's too much work to compile it into a presentation. The next hadith that is mentioned عن عقبة بن عامر يقول خرج إلينا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ونحن في الصفة. That Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam came to us ونحن في الصفة. In another hadith it's mentioned, in another riwayah it's mentioned يعني نحن في المسجد. Which masjid? Masjid al-Nabawi. That Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he came out to us and we were in Masjid al-Nabawi, and he said فقال أيكم يحب أن يغدو إلى بطحان أو العقيق. Who of you would like to go to Buthan or Aqiq? So Buthan and Aqiq is a wadi, a valley that is there in the south of Medina. And he says, فَيَأْتِي كُلَّ يَوْمٍ بِنَاقَتَيْن. And he comes every day with 2 camels, right? So the word camel is used within the Arabs as part of an honor that is there. And when you say, like, nowadays, the world that we are living in, we don't understand the importance of the word when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he mentions naqa or camel, that within the Arabs it's still considered as part of an honor. For example, if you have a daif, if you have a guest, the best that you could do, or the highest levels of honoring that you could do, would be to slaughter an entire camel for them. And the camel that you see these days, it is still considered as part of the culture, and it is still considered as something that is very honored, and something that is back then it was something very luxury. For example, today, imagine if someone was to say, let's go out to the road, and if you can bring the, if you would want to get the best of the luxury cars that's out there in the road, right? So for example, he mentions here فَيَأْتِي كُلَّ يَوْمٍ بِنَاقَتَيْن كَوْمَوَيْنِ زَهْرَوَيْن. So these are kind of sifat, كَوْمَوَيْن is type of زَهْرَوَيْن, yani is the type of the color, and كَوْمَوَيْن, these are the type of camels that are tall, and it has, like, a high, the knees are very high. And these type of camels are considered as the best of the best that you would find within the Arabs, the best of the best camels that you would find. And he says, فَيَأْخُذَهُمَا فِي غَيْرِ إِثْمٍ وَلَا قَطْعِ رَحِمٍ. That means Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says, to go to one of these valleys, and you get, or you bring every day 2 of these camels without any sins, or without causing any disturbance, or yani قَطْعِ رَحِمٍ, yani without causing any disturbance. Why is he mentioning that? Because let's say, for example, we say, if you say, for example, someone is there in this halaqa, or in sitting in the majlis, if you are asked, you can go out and you can bring in, let's say, the best of the best cars that is out there, the most luxury car that is out there, just go take the key, open it, and bring it. Obviously, you're going to find yourself in some situation of, calling the police, or etc. So that is the reason why Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he mentioned في غير إثم ولا قطع رحم, yani without causing any problem, and this is halal. This is completely halal for you, these 2, right? And the Sahabas, they said, قال قلنا يا رسول الله يحب ذلك. يعني the Sahabas, they mentioned, Ya Rasulullah, we all love it. Who does not love it? Yani we all love that. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he mentioned, فَلَأَنَّ يَغْدُو أَحَدُكُمْ إِلَى الْمَسْجِدِ فَيَتَعَلَّمَ آيَتَيْن مِنْ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ يغدو أحدكم إلى المسجد فيتعلم آيتين من كتاب الله خير له من ناقتين. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he mentioned, any of you, if you would go to the masjid and you learn at least 2 ayahs from the kitab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran, it is better for you than these 2 naqatain that you get from, that means referring to the best of the honored gifts that you could get, that you would like. And then he says, وَثَلَاثٌ خَيْرٌ لَهُ مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ. Subhanallah. Three is better than three of them. وَأَرْبَعٌ, yani four ayat. Three ayat is better than three camels. Four ayat is better than four camels. وَمِنْ أَعْدَادِهِنَّ مِنَ الْإِبِلِ. Right? So he mentions it comparing to the camel to show the amount of honor or the amount of virtues that is there in learning the Quran, that you get from learning the Quran. Let's move on to the next bab. So this is one of the babs that even many of us need today in this online world that we live in. باب فضل الاجتماع في المساجد لدرس القرآن. Subhanallah, some of us would even be shocked by hearing that there is a bab as such that we gather in the masjid to recite the Quran. There is a special ajr for it than sitting in front of the phone or in front of the laptop or any other place and learning the Quran. Subhanallah. And it's mentioned here the hadith of Abi Hurairah radiallahu anhu. He narrates from Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما اجتمع قوم في بيت من بيوت الله يتلون كتاب الله ويتدارسونه بينهم إلا نزلت عليهم السكينة وغشيتهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة وذكرهم الله في من عنده. Subhanallah. This hadith, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he mentions ما اجتمع قوم في بيت من بيوت الله, that there is no qawm, that there is no people who gather in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he mentions two things. يتلون كتاب الله ويتدارسونه. So ويتدارسونه, the ulamas, the scholars, they explain this hadith. ويتدارسونه, yani they learn or they teach either the tilawa of the Quran or the meaning of the Quran. يتدارسونه أي يعني تلاوتي أو معاني. So they either learn the meaning of the Quran or the tilawa of the Quran. Illa, and here is where Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentions the virtues, and he mentions four of them. Illa nazalat alayhim as-sakina. The first one he mentions that except that the sakina is sent upon them. That sakina, the meaning of sakina is tranquility that we find in the heart. وغشيتهم الرحمة, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses them with his rahmah, with his mercy. And when you have the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all your sorrows and all your humum and everything is going to go away. The third one, وَحَفَّتْ بِهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. You see, we people, we be around, we be around in the surrounding with people, we talk and we waste time. And when it's mentioned وَحَفَّتْ بِهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ, that they're surrounded by the angels, what is better than that? And the fourth one that is mentioned, subhanallah, is one of the best virtues. We human beings who sin day by day, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us with the best of the best ni'mah, and we still go on to oppress ourselves and transgress the limits of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And who are we? Who are we? Yani, we are not anything in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and all his creations. And in this place, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, وَذَكَرَهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي مَنْ عِنْدَهُ. And Allah mentions these people who gathers in the masajid to recite the Quran, who gathers in the masajid to recite the Quran. And this one is for the men, and for the women, the best is that in their houses, that the one who gathers to recite Quran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentions the name of these people among the people in the heaven, or the people in the samawat. Subhanallah, what is better than those ni'mah? What is better than those virtues that we could get? Then the next hadith that is mentioned, it's more of so when you say hadith, we link it either to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, or the Sahabi, or the Tabi'i. And the reason why we do this, even this is kind of linked in any part of Sharia. When you take anything in Sharia, when you say athar, it's قول النبي. If it's قول النبي or إقرار or فعل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, we say that it is مرفوع, that it is linked to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And the Sahabis and the Tabi'in, we also take those because there could be a chain of narration or anything that even the Sahabas, they narrate, that could be from ilmul ghaib, and they don't even link Sahabi does not link it with Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Still we count it as marfu' to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that it is linked to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, because there's no way a Sahabi could get to know of these things except from Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So this one from Ibn Abbas, the father of Antara, he says to قلت لابن عباس رضي الله عنه, he says, I said to Nabi Ibn Abbas رضي الله عنه, أي العمل أفضل, which of the deeds is the best? And Ibn Abbas رضي الله عنه, he said, ذكر الله أكبر, that the best of them is the remembrance of Allah. وما جلس قوم في بيت من بيوت الله يتدارسونه في كتاب الله ويتعاطونه بينهم إلا أظلتهم الملائكة بأجنحتها وكانوا أضياف الله سبحانه وتعالى ما داموا فيه. So this hadith where Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he mentions the best of the people, right? And the best of the amal is dhikrullah, that we remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and doing dhikr with Quran or the adhkar. وَمَا جَلَسَ قَوْمٌ فِي بَيْتٍ مِّن بُيُوتِ اللَّهِ, that again the same way, the ones who gather together in the masajid, in the houses of Allah, and يَتَدَارَسُونَ فِيهِ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ, and they learn or teach the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they learn between themselves. إِلَّا أَظَلَّتْهُمُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ بِأَجْنِحَتِهَا, except that the malaikas, they shade them with their wings. وَكَانُوا أَضْيَافَ اللَّهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى, and they are the guests of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. مَا دَامُوا فِيهِ, as long as they are in that halaqa or in that jalsa. حَتَّى يَخُوضُوا فِي حَدِيثٍ غَيْرِهِ. So sometimes even you could be in that halaqa, but if you had, or if any one of us had moved from that talk to something else, or our talk was something else than the dhikrullah or the yatadarasuna fihi kitab Allah, then we are not anymore considered as duyufullah or the guests of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Next, we can move to the next bab, which is the main portion of the book, that is the Akhlaq of Hamil al-Qur'an, or the Ahlul Qur'an. And in this part, another al-Muallif rahimahullah, he mentions, he starts this bab, he says, ينبغي لمن علمه الله القرآن وفضله على غيره ممن لم يحمله أو لم يحمله كتابه, that it is important. So this is a complete introduction that he gives. It is important for the one who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught the Quran and has given him precedence over the others with the kitab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So anything the Quran is linked to, you will see that it has been given precedence over anything else. Anything that the Quran is linked to, whether it be in terms of the Quran, when it's linked to a specific shahr, it's the best of the shuhur, it is the best of the months. We say shahr Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. Likewise, anything that the Quran is linked to, the night that the Quran is linked to is the best of the nights, which is Laylatul Qadr. Laylatul Qadri khayrun min alfi shahr. Likewise, the heart that the Quran is linked to is the best of the best hearts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen himself. We always need to make that dua. And this is some of one advice that the scholars, they mention, regardless of whatever schedule that you put for Quran, regardless of whatever you do for Quran in terms of putting up a schedule or setting up a schedule that I will memorize in one day 5 lines or 1 page or 2 page, and then you put a schedule that I will finish Quran on this specific day. You can't. It's very hard to find someone who had stuck to that schedule and fulfilled it according to that schedule. Why is it tough? Because the Quran, we need to understand, is not our right. It is the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala It is the qawl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He only himself has the right over that Quran. And when we want to memorize the Quran, we need to request, we need to put the talab, request from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to memorize that Quran. And it never comes except with the tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It never comes except with the tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have to engage in a lot of dua and a lot of sincerity when it comes to memorizing the Quran or being linked with the Quran. And it is not something that is easy to attain or get into itself. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from the people of Quran. And then he mentions in the muqaddimah of this bab, of this chapter, ينبغي لمن علمه الله القرآن وفضله على غيره ممن لم يحمله كتابه وأحب أن يكون من أهل القرآن وأهل الله وخاصته وممن وعده الله من الفضل العظيم مما تقدم ذكرنا له وممن قال الله عز وجل يتلونه حق تلاوته. So all these are part of the muqaddimah that he's is mentioning as the one who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given precedence over, etc. The one who has who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has honored him with Quran. And Allah says يتلونه حق تلاوته. And in the tafsir it is mentioned يعني يعملونه به حق عمله, that يتلونه حق تلاوته, that reciting it and giving its rights. Also, the tafsir of it, the meaning of it is that يعملون به حق عمله, that it's not only we recite, but we have to act upon or practice the Quran and give its rights as we learn. And that is very important. وممن قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الذي يقرأ القرآن وهو ماهر به مع السفرة الكرام البررة. That Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam in one of the hadith he mentioned that the one who recites the Quran and one who masters it, وهو ماهر به, the one who masters the Quran and understands it, will be raised مع السفرة الكرام البررة. He will be raised with the noble of the noble creations on the day of Qiyamah. And والذي يقرأ وهو عليه شاق له أجران. The one who recites it and the one who stammers over it and he's trying and he's going through hardship to recite the Quran, له أجران, and he gets double the reward of the one who can recite fluently. So now he's going into the things that we need to follow. فينبغي له أن يجعل القرآن ربيعا لقلبه يعمر به ما خرب من قلبه. It is important for a حامل القرآن, the one who recites the Quran, that he makes the Quran يعني ربيعا لقلبه, that he makes the Quran the main part of his heart. We say Rabi' in Arabic for spring, right? For the season of spring, we mentioned Rabi'. And by mentioning this season is a season where everything starts reviving after, the autumn comes and everything falls down. And then again, the nabatat, the plants and everything grow back, right? So we have to keep the Quran as something that revives our heart. And that is the meaning when it's mentioned as يَجْعَلُ الْقُرْآنَ رَبِيعًا لِقَلْبِهِ, that it is part of what? That it revives the heart. يَعْمُرُ بِهِ مَا خَرِبَ مِنْ قَلْبِهِ, that it fixes what has been spoiled or ruined in the heart, right? We have to use the Quran to fix what has been ruined in our hearts. وَيَتَأَدَّبَ بِآدَابِ الْقُرْآنِ, and we hold on to the adab and akhlaq of the Quran, that the Hamil al-Quran should be a Quran walking on earth. And that is what Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was, that he was a Quran that was walking on earth. Yani he held on to the best of the best manners that was there in Quran. وَيَتَخَلَّقَ بِأَخْلَاقٍ شَرِيفَةٍ, that he has to hold on to extremely good manners. يبين بها عن سائر الناس ممن لا يقرأ القرآن. يعني he has to hold on to extremely good manners that even differentiates his good manners from the ones who did not learn the Quran. Because one of the main things that you learn the Quran is to hold on to extremely high moral values. And if you cannot differentiate in manners or the characteristics of a Hamil al-Quran and the ones who did not memorize Quran, that means we are on the wrong path. That means we are on the wrong path. Then he mentions فأول ما ينبغي له أن يستعمل تقوى الله في السر والعلانية. And the Hamil al-Quran should be the best in taqwa Allah, in piety, and fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in sir, and uh, in secret and in public. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from the ones who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this word that you find after باستعمال الورع في مطعمه ومشربه وملبسه ومكسبه. The word wara, it does not mean, many people think يعني the word wara is to caution oneself from staying away from haram. The word wara actually means يعني staying away from haram is wajib, that there is no question over. The word wara, it means there are things which are halal, but that is there within the borders of things which are haram. Things which are halal, that is there within the borders of things which are haram. And this is what Hamil al-Quran needs to stay away from in terms of his food, in terms of his drinks, in terms of his clothes, and in terms of his earnings. Why is that? Even sometimes, you would find, okay, let's say this type of earning or this type of rizq, yani it is halal, but there is some shubahat, there's something doubtful, there's something questionable in that. And a Hamil al-Quran should even stay away from that. Subhanallah, yani the reason why this is mentioned, that a Hamil al-Quran even needs to stay away from these small things, that even things which are halal, right? Even it comes under the bab of halal, but it is close to haram than halal, but it is within halal in terms of fiqh. Even these are things that Hamil al-Quran needs to stay away from. Imagine the level of sincerity and pure, purity that we need to have in our hearts. Subhanallah. When we read all this and we see, Subhanallah, we are nowhere close to even mentioning about, and we are not even people to mention ourselves as akhlaq, or I mean Hamil al-Quran. We are not that, we are not yet there. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from the ones who are the ones, make us from the ones who He preserved and ones whom He called as Ahlullahi wa Ahlullahi, Ahlul Quran hum khassatuh. Then he mentions وَيَكُونَ بَصِيرًا بِزَمَانِهِ وَفَسَادِ أَهْلِهِ. And the Hamil al-Quran needs to be wise, and he needs to have an open eyes, right? He needs to be concerned of his time and the fitna that is there around us. The fitna that is there around the Hamil al-Quran, the preserver of the Quran. And the fasad, the corruptions that even his people are going through, or his family or his people are going through, so that he stays away from them. Sometimes, we get pulled into things. We be like, subhanallah, this is the situation. We might need to, we don't have any other options, etc., etc. We get pulled into things, but we have to be very careful and cautious about this. And we need to ask our heart every now and then. We have to ask our heart every now and then, are we on the right path? And are we doing the right thing? فهو يحذرهم فهو يحذرهم على دينه مقبلا على شأنه مهموما بإصلاح ما فسد من أمره. So Hamil al-Quran has to caution himself and his people, but most importantly, we are talking about the Hamil al-Quran himself. So we are going to look at ourselves first. That he cautions himself on his deen, and gives importance to his things, that he tries to fix them. مهموما بإصلاح ما فسد من أمره. He gives importance to things that are corrupted within ourselves, that we have to try to fix. Another point he mentions, حافظا للسانه. A Hafid al-Quran or a Hamid al-Quran should preserve his tongue. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in one of the hadith, he mentioned amsik alayka lisanak, and he showed the lisan, he pointed to the with his fingers to the tongue, and he said amsik alayka hada, right, hold on to this. And some of the sahabas, they asked, ya Rasulullah, will we be accountable for what our tongue speaks? And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, yes, the one that the tongue speaks is the worst of the worst sins, that it could take you to the worst of the punishments that you could get in hellfire. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from the ones who protect our tongues and guard our mouth. And حافظا للسانه, he preserves his tongues مميزا لكلامه. So when he speaks, يعني إن تكلم, if he speaks, تكلم بعلم. Right? If he speaks, if حامل القرآن speaks, he speaks only with knowledge. إذا رأى الكلام صوابا. If in that place talking is necessary and if he sees that it is correct, then he speaks with knowledge. وإن سكت سكت بعلم إذا كان السكوت صوابا. So even if he be quiet in certain places, he bees quiet with knowledge if he sees that being quiet in that area is the best. So holding or preserving our tongue is one of the most important thing that, or guarding our tongue is very important in terms of the akhlaq of Hamil al-Quran. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy upon us to follow these manners, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it as part of our characteristics. قليل الخوض فيما لا يعنيه يخاف من لسانه أشد مما يخاف من عدوه. That he قليل الخوض فيما لا يعنيه يخاف من لسانه أشد مما يخاف من عدوه. That he does not like the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, she mentioned المؤمن لا صلي محمد ترك ما لا يعنيه, right? The part where where we should leave the best for a mu'min is that he leaves that things that does not concern him. Likewise, he fears يخاف من لسانه, he fears his tongue more than he fears his enemy. Subhanallah. You know how when it comes to an enemy, we think what are the the khitta or the plans that they would be doing, etc. And what kind of, if he thinks like this, we have to think like this, etc. We put so much planning. So we have to fear our tongue more than we fear our enemy. Subhanallah. يحبس لسانه كحبسه لعدوه. And he imprisons his tongue the way someone imprisons the enemy. Subhanallah. ليأمن شره وسوء عاقبته. To make sure that he guarantees that he stays away from, or to protect himself from the evilness or the sins that the tongue could cause easily. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go through the rest of the bab, and I'm going to use this kitab of Mukhtasar Akhlaq Hamalathul Qur'an, which is a summary of the kitab Akhlaq Hamalathul Qur'an by Sheikh Khalid al-Sabt, if you would know him. And we could go through the rest of the bab from here, inshallah. So we stopped here, I think. Yes. So we won't be taking each and every single part, but we will be trying to take this book is actually a summary of the book, but we are also going to take a summary of this book, of the summary itself. And then he mentions قليل الضحك فيما يضحك فيه الناس, that and this was one of the sifat of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that he did not laugh out too much. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam did not like that sifa either, because laughing too much would cause someone to not become serious about his life in this dunya, and would make him not take the portions of akhirah seriously. And it was something that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam would dislike someone laughing too much from silly jokes, etc. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, if he would laugh, he would smile, and he would smile until what we call as the teeth that we call as dahik, right? Until that is the premolars, until that is visible. And he mentions, continuing on, يكره المزاح خوفا من اللعب فإن مزح قال حقا. Even if he jokes, he stays away or cautions himself from joking unnecessarily. But even if he jokes, he says only the truth and does not lie when joking. باسط الوجه طيب الكلام. Then the next thing that is mentioned, لا يمدح نفسه بما فيه فكيف بما ليس فيه. So this is something extremely very important. لا يمدح, that he does not praise himself, or he does not get into this the Hamil Quran should not get himself into a place where he is yani ujab, he is like, admiring himself. Oh, he's like, oh, I did so and so, I did this, etc., etc. I accomplished this. These are not akhlaq of a Hamil Quran. The others can admire, but that is for the others to do. And especially in this book, we are talking about the Hamil al-Quran himself. We are not talking about what the other people have to do for Hamil al-Quran. As for what the society or the mujtama has to do for Hamil al-Quran, yes, they have to honor the Hamil al-Quran, they have to respect, they have to spend a lot to bring up Huffaz al-Quran and scholars in the community, etc., etc. But we are not going to speak about those, but we are going to speak of the rights or haqq of the Hamil al-Quran himself. And it's for ourselves to look on him as if we are looking on a mirror. Do we have these qualities? And we get rid of these. لا يمدح نفسه بما فيه. He should not praise himself of what he has achieved, or what he does not should not brag. And this is something that you would easily see in the Western community, where if you don't sell yourself or market yourself, or you don't brag yourself, you are not seen worthwhile in the community. And easily many of the طلاب العلم or many of the طلبة العلم gets pushed into that. And it is something that we have to be sincere of, and we have to caution our heart every now and then to stay away from this, because slowly you go into things that you have not even done. And this admiring of oneself is very dangerous. It goes into a place where he starts claiming things which even he has not done. أي يحمد بما لم يفعل, that he tries to praise himself of things which he has not even done. And even the things that he has done, he does not praise himself, because the ajr is عند Allah, and we don't know if it has been accepted in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or no. And also another important point that we need to keep in mind, that one of the very first people who will enter hellfire will be a Qari al-Quran. And you know that hadith where one of the very first people who will enter hellfire, a Hamil al-Quran, the one who, not a Hamil al-Quran, the Qari al-Quran, the one that died in jihad, the one that gave sadaqah لغير وجه الله. So as for the one who enters hellfire first, because he yani Qari al-Quran, it will be said to him on the day of Qiyamah that you recited the Quran not for the sake of Allah, but you had recited it for others to say, oh, you are so and so good reciter, or to get the praises of others. So this is a very big red mark or red flag when it comes to a Hamil al-Quran, that لا يمدح نفسه بما فيه. That is very important. Then the next part, ولا يغتاب أحدا ولا يحكر أحدا ولا يسب أحدا ولا يشمت بمصيبة ولا يبغي على أحد ولا يحسده. A Hamil al-Quran should not have haqr or hasad towards someone else. And this is something, unfortunately, we even see nowadays, and we see it in ourselves sometimes when we see someone else reciting better than us, or someone else, reciting or getting a bit better than us. We try to find aib, or we try to find issues in him, etc., etc. And these are things that Imam Ajurri rahimahullah mentioned 1,000 years ago. In the next bab, you will see more and more. There are so many sifat that we need to, or characteristics that we need to avoid ourselves from. Sometimes, it's hard for some of the hearts to accept that, okay, another person or the student of a teacher is becoming better. And these are big red flags when it comes to Hamil al-Quran. The next part that I would like to touch from, also in this place, إذا نعم وإن مشى بعلم وإن قعد بعلم. Even if he walks with knowledge. وإن قعد بعلم, يعني he does not walk with pride, or he does not act with pride. and it is mentioned clearly in the Quran, وَلَن تَخْرِقَ الْأَرْضَ, that you will not even, like, even if you try to be having a person who has all the jabarut and he thinks that he is mutakabbir and everything, he will not, split open the earth by walking in pride. So in مشى بعلم وإن قعد بعلم يجتهد ليسلم الناس من لسانه ويده ولا يجهل إن جهل عليه حلم ولا يظلم وإن ظلم عفا ولا يبغي على أحد وإن بغي عليه صبر. Yeah, so another important point that you need to focus, متواضع في نفسه, that he humbles himself. He humbles himself. إذا قيل له الحق قبله. If the right or the correct thing is told to him, he accepts it من صغير أو كبير, either from the ones who are smaller than him or younger than him, or from the ones who are elder than him. يطلب الرفعة من الله عز وجل لا من المخلوقين, that he requests the rif'a, يعني he requests to be respected and honored only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not from the makhluk. He does not expect or even ask the people to honor him, but he asks it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لا يتأكل بالقرآن. This is another important topic that we'll be touching in this book. لا يتأكل بالقرآن, that he does not try to gain income, or he does not go behind getting income from the Quran. ولا يحب أن تقضى له بالحوائج, and he does not try to be as if a person who, because he has memorized the Quran, because he is a teacher of Quran, that he tries to expect from people to fulfill his needs. ولا يسعى به إلى أبناء الملوك, and it's and the Haml al-Quran should not be close friends for the sake of gaining benefits with the rich people or the أبناء الملوك, يعني from the children of the kings and princes. ولا يجالس معه به الأغنياء ليكرموه, يعني. So these are places where it is not a question of halal or haram. These are things which are halal, but it is a question to more of ask your heart. It's a question to the heart. In these places, are you sitting because they will give you more ihtiram or more honor? They will honor you more because you're Hafidh al-Quran. Or if that person would say, let's say, did not memorize the Quran, would still he be honored in the same way? If it is a no, then going to these places so that he is being honored from these people just because he is a Hamil al-Quran or a Hafidh al-Quran is something wrong, and he has to stay away from. And likewise, I said, the society has to honor the Hamil Quran. The society has to respect the Hamil Quran. They have to try to, the society or the Tulab al-Ilm, they have to respect the ulamas and the teachers. But these are topics we are talking for oneself as a teacher, as a sheikh, as a student, as a talib al-ilm, as someone who memorizes the Quran, for ourselves to follow and to be careful from. إن كسب الناس من الدنيا الكثير بلا فقه ولا بصيرة كسب هو القليل بفقه وعلم إن لبس الناس اللين والفاخر لبس هو من الحلال ما يستر عورته. So even in terms of, let's say, for example, from the people, if they were to wear the luxury of luxury, he don't go behind materialistic things. I'm just summarizing the whole points for you, that the Haml al-Quran should not be materialistic. The Haml al-Quran should not have the love for materialism in his life, going behind luxury and going behind things, but he tries to be normal, and he tries to humble himself with, yes, appropriate clothes and with appropriate respectable clothes, but not something that is of extravagant or something that he spends on too much without the need for it. In وسع عليه وسع, يعني if he has enough rizq, yani he has been given enough. And this is something that is always told for the people of Quran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ad-dunya yatik, the dunya will come for you, whether you like it or no. But fasbir, have sabr. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will definitely bless his people with the best in dunya and akhirah. But our importance should not be the dunya. That is the point that we need to speak. And in wussi alayhi wasa'an, if he had gained a good income, he also should try to give more and more sadaqah and help the people around him in terms of his students or the people that is there around him. وَإِنْ أُمْسِكَ عَلَيْهِ يَمْسَكْ. If it was, if he has hardship upon him in terms of income, he also has to hold on a bit in terms of, helping others in standards of income. That's what is mentioned here. ويحذر على نفسه من الدنيا ما يطغيه. This is also something very important, that he cautions himself and he always checks. Hamil al-Quran needs to check himself. Am I having hubb dunya? Am I having the love for this dunya? And that has to be something that has to be got ridden of, and should be taken away from the hearts. That is, you should not have the hubb of this dunya, and your focus should be akhirah. But the dunya will come, but it is not for us to focus on dunya and be focused in what we need in this dunya. So let me quickly summarize and go on to the next bab. Birrul walidain is something extremely important, that he takes care of his parents. يتبع واجبات القرآن والسنة, that he follows or lives by Quran and Sunnah. These are important etiquettes. يأكل الطعام بعلم ويشرب بعلم ويلبس بعلم. That يعني بعلم, that he does all this with knowledge, that in terms of wisdom, in terms of not showing off, in terms of not going too much beyond the limits, etc. And also not the opposite of going towards wearing torn clothes or things that is against the muru'ah. Yasil al-rahim, that he has to hold on to his kinship. ويكره القطعية, and he has to hate ruining the kinship within his siblings or his parents or his relatives. And this is something very important. من قطعه لم يقطعه. Even if someone else was to cut the kinship, or from his relatives or someone from his close people to cut kinship with him, even he has to humble himself and he has to be good towards them and be someone good towards the others. The next bab that we would, before we touch the next bab, there is a quick thing that we need to focus over here. When حامل القرآن, he learns the Quran, فإذا درس القرآن فبحضور فهم وعقل. That when he studies the Quran or learns the Quran, he needs to not only just recite it, but he has to be focused in presence. A place where not that you'll be reciting the Quran and then every 5 minutes or 2 minutes you check your phone, or your mind is completely somewhere else, but you sit and recite the Quran. You have to be physically and mentally be there in reciting the Quran. Himmatu iqa'ul fahm lima alzamahu Allah. And his importance or his interest should be to understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded him, min ittiba'i ma amar wal intihai amma naha. And his importance should be to follow what Allah has commanded and to stay away from things that Allah has prohibited. ليس همته متى أختم السورة. The importance should not be, when will I finish this surah? When will I go to the next page? When will I finish the Quran? When will I finish the next juz? Yes, that should be part of the goals, but the most important himma, the priority should be that we understand what we recite and that we act upon what we recite. And this is now he's defining the himma, the importance or the things that we need to give importance to when reciting the Quran. متى أستغني بالله عن غيره. When will I start, following or being dependent only on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without the others. متى أكون من المتقين. When will I become from the muttaqin, from the ones who have taqwa. متى أكون من المحسنين. When will I become from the muhsin. متى أكون من المتوكلين. When will I become from the ones who have complete tawakkul or trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. متى أكون من الخاشعين متى أكون من الصابرين. When will I become from the ones who have khushu', from the ones who have sabr. متى أكون من الصادقين. When will I become from the ones who are truthful. متى أكون من الخائفين متى أكون من الراجين. And these are things. متى أزهد في الدنيا. When will I leave or have zuhd in this dunya. يعني take the dunya out of my heart. It's not easy. It's not easy. Being sincere is extremely tough. Even when you're a teacher of Quran, even when you're, even if you're a mashayikh, from the mashayikhs, from the teachers, from the asatida, it is still tough to have sincerity. It is something that, a hard journey that we need to follow and pass before we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. متى أتوب من الذنوب. When will I do tawbah from my sins. And these are the questions that someone should ask himself when he is reciting the Quran. And each and every single question that is written here is important. So I think I'll move on to, since time is a bit tight, we might touch a few of the other babs and then we will try to finish as much as we can, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with the knowledge that is beneficial. The next bab that we have, so unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to go through all the akhlaq of Haml al-Quran or all those babs, since it's only a summary of the summary itself. Bab akhlaq man qara al-Quran la yurid bihi Allah. Subhanallah. In his book, he has written a bab, this chapter, the one who recites the Quran for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فأما من قرأ القرآن للدنيا ولأبناء الدنيا فإن من أخلاقه. And he mentions the one who recites the Quran for dunya, and for the people of dunya, or the son of Adam of dunya, or to, yani, what does it mean to get motivation from people, for people to praise him, for people to earn a good name within people, etc., etc. What are the bad akhlaq that he would have? And these are things that we need to stay away from. أن يكون حافظا لحروف القرآن. He will be a memorizer of Quran by the letters of Quran. You know the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, which he mentioned that there will be a time when it comes, the people will recite Quran, but it will not pass down from the throat, and it will not reach the hearts. I think there is someone asking, it's Maghrib Salah time. I think we will be just done in 10 minutes, inshallah. Yeah, we should be done in 10 minutes. أن يكون حافظا لحروف القرآن مضيعا لحدوده. And that he, and he is ignorant, or he is not even concerned of its limits, and he transgresses all those limits. متعظما في نفسه. And he has or he what do you say, متعظما في نفسه, يعني he honors himself so much, or he is he admires himself, that he praises himself so much. متكبرا على غيره. And if he speaks to others, he has proud upon, he shows his pride and his proudness that he knows over the others. قد اتخذ القرآن بضاعة يتأكل به الأغنياء. And he took the Quran as something, as a tool that he could eat from the rich people. Because what happens when someone has a good voice, or he reaches a good level in Quran, obviously the people, the rich people and everyone, they will try to give him good gifts, and they will try to have him close to them. The muluk, the kings, would like to have qurra who have good voices to lead them. And when they gift things, they gift big things. And these are stuffs that we need to ask questions from our heart. Am I going there for these people to gift me, or is it for and this is something that we will be touching in the next bab, inshallah. قد اتخذ القرآن بضاعة يتأكل به الأغنياء ويستقضي به الحوائج. And he took the Quran as a tool just to get rid of his needs, just to have an income for himself. يعظم أبناء الدنيا ويحقر الفقراء. And what he does is he will praise the rich people and he will put down the poor people. إن علم الغني رفق به طمعا في دنياه وإن علم الفقير زجر وعنفه. يعني if he teaches the rich people, he will be so kind and good with them, and if he teaches the poor people, he will be so stubborn on them. لأنه لا دنيا له يطمع فيها يستخدم به الفقراء. Because the poor people, يعني they don't have any dunya in them that he could use as a tool for him to gain the dunya that he wants to gain. And in كان حسن الصوت أحب أن يقرأ للملوك. If he has good voice, he would be happy to recite to the kings and the princes and the rich people and to lead them in salah. But if the faqir or the poor people or the normal common people ask him to lead in salah, it ثقل عليه, and it will become kind of a burden on him, or he will start disliking it, like, oh, I lead these people, those kind of things. So these are all part of things that the one who has a part of etiquettes that the one who has uh, had requested or wants Quran, but for the sakes of dunya. يفخر على الناس بالقرآن, and he prides himself over the people with Quran. ويحتج على من دونه في الحفظ. The one, he tries to, show evidence or towards others that he has learnt more, and he tries to let's say, for example, there's also another hafiz. He tries to compete saying, oh, I know so and so qira'at, from the shawadh, right? ما معه من القراءات وزيادة المعرفة بالغرائب من القراءات التي لو عقل لعلم أنه يجب عليه ألا يقرأ بها. So he, for example, let's say someone knows there's another hafiz as well, and he be like, okay, I know قراءة العشر الشواذ, I know قراءات from this hadith. Like he tries to bring things that is unknown to the other person to bring himself higher over the other people. And these are some of the sifat of the people who learn Quran for the sake of dunya. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. And sometimes, also when we listen to these, we might start thinking of people, so and so people, or I know so and so person who has these and these sifat. But we have to be very careful here that we are learning to check ourselves, to self-reflect on ourselves, and it is not for us to judge others or to check on others. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the sincerity. Then يعيب كل من لم يحفظ كحفظه. And if he has a really good hifظ, he tries to weaken down the other person. He'd be like, oh, I know my hifظ is so strong, etc. Or he tries to complete, he tells, oh, why don't you recite, let's see who is better, etc., etc. These are part of things that if he does this with the wrong intention, and these are also part of akhlaq that we try to stay away from. متكبرا في جلسته متعاظما في تعليمه لغيره ليس للخشوع في قلبه موضع كثير الضحك والخوض فيما لا يعنيه. So these are some of the sifat that we took. لا يخشى عند استماع القرآن. This is something important, that within time it becomes a habit, it becomes a part of aada, that as part of a habit, that learning the Quran is something that is part of my daily routine, etc., etc. But that ta'zeem, honoring and giving that respect for Quran every time it's heard, and that khushu is gone away, it becomes desensitized. These are things that we need to stay away from. Wala yabki, and he does not cry over the Quran. Wala yahzan, he does not become sorrow over the ayat, and he does not ponder over the ayat. And what happens, and these people of Quran, يعني إن قصر رجل في حقه, if someone did not honor him or respect him in the way it is supposed to be respected. He says, أهل القرآن لا يقصر في حقوقهم وأهل القرآن تقضى حوائجهم يستقضي من الناس حق نفسه ولا يستقضي من نفسه ما لله عليها. يعني he tries to say that, for example, if someone does not honor him, he says that Ahlul Quran, you have to honor them, etc., etc., but he means himself. Yani, he thinks that he's doing for the sake of Allah, and he thinks that he's sincerely advising that person, but he is literally saying it for himself, right? So these are some of the sifat that we need to stay away from. And again, there are certain things that is linked with the heart, right? There are certain things that is linked with the heart. And I think I'll just touch one or two points from the next babs, and then we can end over there since time is very limited. The next babs come in the next chapters. Bab Akhlaq Al-Muqri إذا جلس يقري ويلقن لله. That if the akhlaq, the manners that a muqri, the one who teaches Quran, should have when he sits to teach the Quran. I think we touched some of the points from here. So let's, I mean, there are more points, but I think it's more important that we take from ذكر أخلاق من يقرأ على المقرئ. Some of the akhlaq, يعني from the one who recites, the student, right? The previous bab was the teacher, now it's the student. So when the student is reciting to the teacher, يعني, there are parts of respect that he needs to adhere to. Let's say, for example, the muqri, the teacher stops him in certain ayat, he needs to adhere to and does not request for more. These are part of the akhlaq, and that is the summary of this whole paragraph. Then عن مجاهد في قول الله عز وجل أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم. يعني وأولي الأمر منكم, he mentions that to obey when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obey, but when Allah says to obey, يعني obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and obey his Rasul. وأولي الأمر منكم يعني الفقهاء والعلماء, that to obey the fuqahas and the ulamas, the scholars. ثم ينبغي لمن لقنه الأستاذ ألا يجاوز ما لقنه. يعني that is the same point which I talked about, that if the Ustadh, and these are qualified teachers of, يعني teachers of Quran whom we are talking about, the mashayikh, and these are things that we try to and that is how we can engage ourselves in this journey of learning the Quran. And to be honest, it's very hard nowadays, yani, to find good scholars or good scholars in the field of Quran. And when we find anyone, we try to hold on to these opportunities to learn from them and to benefit from them as much as we can. And I'm saying this including myself, that I'm a talib al-ilm like you all, yani a student of knowledge, just trying to learn more and just to share the knowledge more as much as we can for the sake of Allah. وينبغي له أن يقبل على ما يلقنه أو يأخذ عليه. نعم, I think we'll. Okay, this is another point. أن يأخذ على نفسه في جلوسه في المسجد ألا يخوض فيما لا يعنيه. When he sits down for the halaqah of Quran, he does not engage himself in things that are not relevant to him. يعني he leaves those and focuses on Quran. ويحذر الوقيعة في أعراض الناس ويحذر أن يخوض في حديث الدنيا. يعني he cautions himself from engaging in the talks of dunya in the masjid and in the halaqahs of Quran. وفضول الكلام, يعني too much talking or too much relaxing. And these are some of the sifat that one should be careful. I think we will stop here. The next bab talks about adab al-qurra عند تلاوتهم القرآن. So some of the things that is mentioned in this bab is about for example, when you recite the Quran, that you sit and you be engaged in the Quran itself and not anything that is other than the Quran. And when you go through the ayat of sajda, that you try to do sujood as much as you can and don't just leave it because it's a sunnah. Because this hadith of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, إذا قرأ ابن آدم سجد فسجد اعتزل الشيطان يبكي, that if the Ibn Adam, the son of Adam, he recites the ayat of sajda and he does sujood, shaitan, he starts crying from this and he says, he says, woe upon myself. Umira ibn Adam bisujud fasajad. When son of Adam was commanded to do sujud, he did sujud, and for him is Jannah. And when shaitan was وأمرت بالسجود فعصيت فلي النار. يعني when it was commanded to shaitan to do sujood, he disobeyed, and for him is the hellfire, and he starts crying. So these are things that could get ourselves away from shaitan. And these are some of the akhlaq. There are so many of them more which we have missed. I would say we took only maybe 25 to 30% of the book. We have through many of the skip through many of the hadith, and also using siwak before reciting the Quran, being with wudu. These are basic things which many of us know. And the last bab, that is في حسن الصوت بالقرآن, يعني that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he mentioned زينوا القرآن بأصواتكم, يعني that you try to beautify the recitation of the Quran with your voices. I think we will end it there, بإذن. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with the amal, the practical application of whatever we have learned, and that we put on to our practice, and we try to learn more and more, بإذن ta'ala. Is there any questions from anyone? Anything? Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. How to join more sessions like this in the future? So explanation of books, either you can, I will be posting it on my Facebook page, or there are some groups for Al-Itqan online on Telegram or WhatsApp that you can follow. These are some of the places that you will find the post. If another brother or sister can pass on her or the WhatsApp chat or the Facebook here. Any other questions? Anything else anyone would like to ask? Okay, there's a question with regards to teaching the Quran and also earning from it. Is it not good, for example, as an engineer, someone leaves the job to learn the Quran and teach, and also benefit from teaching? Is it haram? So when it comes to earning from teaching Quran, there are a few things that we need to be very careful. It is mustahab that you don't take anything from learning Quran. It is mustahab. And it also comes to a question of fiqh, yeah, from the madahibs, whether earning from Quran is something that is permitted or no. And majority of the scholars have tried to abstain themselves away from it. And there are some of the scholars who have permitted it, especially from the Hanafi madhab, or some scholars who have permitted it. But the thing is, it's more linked with the intention than the earning, right? Because what happens is, with time, fitrah of someone is that they would go more towards someone who has a good voice, more towards dunya, more towards things that could be attractive and gaining attention. So that is what a heart will desire easily towards, right? So when it comes to these places, what happens with the teachers of Quran is, initially they start earning, and then they start having all these goals, and all these goals, as I want to achieve so and so, or I want to build such a big house, or etc etc. And when you get on to these, it is where you're getting yourself into poison, or you're poisoning literally the whole thing that you have got yourself into. So if you're ever going to earn from teaching Quran, sometimes because there's a utter necessity for it, first of all, before going into the field of Quran, make sure that you do, or you keep the niyyah, that I am not going to have materialistic desires. I'm going to do zuhd for myself away from dunya. I'm not going to, like materialistic things. I'm not going to aim towards luxury, but I'm going to aim towards the other side. I'm going to sacrifice my whole life for the sake of Allah, right? And after that, if you have to have an income out of it for the necessity, then you make sure that you don't again fall into any of the intentions or the niyyah of putting yourself in the wrong path, where you go back into, I want to do more and more classes, or I want to, expand my group just so that I can earn more money. And this is where it goes more and more into poisoning oneself. And in this book, if you would see, يعني أن لا يتأكل بالقرآن has been mentioned so many times, right? That the one, he does not use Quran as a tool to fulfill his needs, because it's something that is extremely scary. It's very hard. It's very hard. Including myself, I'm saying it's very hard to be sincere. It's very tough. And even praying 5 times salah in jama'ah with takbiratul ihram, there are so many scholars who had mentioned, one of the scholars, he mentions, I suffered for 20 years pushing myself, going through hardship, just to catch salah in jama'ah with takbiratul ihram. And the next 20 years, I found the coolness of salah in salah. I found the coolness of heart in salah, and it became something easy for me. So initially, you have to put a lot of juhd, and when it comes to intentions, it is very hard. Our fitrah, the nature of our human being, is that we try to move more towards dunya, and that is part of how we have been created, right? That in fitrah, that we try to move towards more in dunya, and we have to strengthen our iman, and we have to strengthen ourselves so much so that we stay away from any of these, because even slightly falling into any of these will cause a big issue, will get ourselves in the wrong path, where it's better that you don't even enter the field of becoming a Hamil Quran. Rather, just learn the Quran and just be there and not become a teacher, rather than becoming a teacher and poisoning our ranks uh, within Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Iyadan billah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all, and may Allah grant us all sincere intention. And that is the reason why the scholars have warned so much to be extremely cautious with earning with Quran. So I think there's no more questions. So we'll stop there, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.